Hey, you're not Aaron.
No, I'm not.
You're not Paul.
I am Paul, but I'm not.
Okay,
Paul.
this joke's already old, and we just started it 8 seconds ago. But welcome back, other Paul. So
I made it.
Yeah, he made it. He was doing stuff in the real world, that dangerous, cruel place that I don't know why anyone would venture out there when they could just sit at home and listen to a podcast instead. But other Paul is back, here to record a podcast with me, other Paul. And we are grateful, of course, to Aaron for filling in last week. But now we are reunited again, long lost Pauls, just good friends.
Yeah,
back together.
I'm glad Aaron could join us in our little podcast endeavor.
Yeah,
Sound
I know.
like y'all had a great time.
We had a fun time. I know it was great of him to stop by, like, especially since we have such a large, long-running, loyal fan base that would have been really disappointed if we'd missed an episode.
We do have like 4 subscribers.
I think we have 5 now, actually.
Oh.
So, yeah, we're moving up in the world. It will be funny. Like, I don't think we'll ever get super big, but it would be funny if, like, one day in, like, a few years, if this show actually did get a decent following, and then, like, that somebody, if we had, like, got to the point where we had, like, tens of thousands of subscribers or whatever, there are going to be people that will listen to the back catalog of all of the old episodes, and then they'll, like, stumble across this, episode 6 or whatever this is, and we're talking about having literally 5 subscribers and be like, whoa, there was a time.
There was a time. Or it's like, they'll be like 20 years from now, we're still doing this, okay? And we have like hundreds and hundreds of, we have like thousands, we have thousands of podcasts. And like we'll still have like 4 subscribers, and then some random dude will stumble across this channel and just be flabbergasted at the plethora of videos we'll have with like 1 view.
Yeah, like how are these guys still? The commitment here, like we're just waiting for our break one day.
Yeah. Yes.
That was the most horrible like old person voice I think I've ever done, but yeah, that
you convinced me.
Okay, well, good. Yeah, so this was a fun, I guess this is an interesting subject to talk about. We are, of course, talking today about that'll be a funny joke for all of the audio listeners. If you're an audio-only listener, that was the Invincible title card that you just got to watch. That was sort of an amusing joke. In the show. Yeah, it was like a meta joke, I guess.
The first time it happened, I was like, okay, I don't know if I caught it, but the like the second and third episode, I was like, are they like, because it was during like serious moments.
Yes.
And it's just such a poor cut.
Yeah.
This has to be intentional. And I was cracking up. I'm like, okay, I guess this is funny. I don't know.
It's funny. There's a couple times where it does like feel like it almost takes away a little bit, but I guess you got to give them, props for dedication or whatever. I don't actually know if that's something they do. I mean, I know that obviously a comic's a very different medium, but like, does the first time they say his name in the comic in a particular issue, does it cut to like a title frame or whatever they're called, panels? I think they're called panels in comics, right? The individual pictures. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I'm
just gonna say that confidently.
Yes, as someone who's read like 4 comic books in my life. Yeah,
it's 4 more than what I've read.
So yeah, they hard cut to Invincible. I think they do technically say the word Invincible in the first episode before the title thing, but it's not his name yet because it's like his dad's telling him like, most teenagers, they believe they're invincible, but you, Mark, you really are invincible. And then, he gets like the light bulb over his head and he's like, I have my superhero name. But
yeah, I feel like that's such an accurate, like what someone in high school would think. Like, yeah, like this, adolescent boy, like, I'm invincible. Which he is. I mean, of course, the animation style, he really looks like he could easily be like 25.
Yes.
He's
it's
in high
kind
school.
of funny that, like, so in live action TV shows, obviously, like, there's sort of the joke about high schoolers in TV shows looking like they're, 30, because actually, you're not actually going to get a bunch of actors that are in their, mid-teens. I think we actually, maybe Aaron and I might have talked about that a little bit last week, that teenager actors are, like, the worst to work with. Like, kids are hard to work with, but teenagers are just by far the worst. And so you're not actually going to get teenagers to do high school, and so all these high schoolers look like they're, in their 20s, because they are. But in this show, which is animated, so you totally could make them all just look like kids. But they still look like they're 20. So it's a little funny that we, like, bleed over a little.
Yes.
I don't know.
And the style looks like it looks like the comics pretty closely. Like, usually TV shows will, like, take their own twist. Like, out of the plethora of Spider-Man and Batman, cartoons out there, everyone tries to take their own twist on how they represent their superhero. This one seems to be pretty accurate to what the comics look like, which I thought was honorable.
It's interesting. It is cool in a way that it is basically just like the animated. It's like they basically took the comic book and just, like, animated between the panels or something, is almost what it seems like they did with this show. Which I'm not saying, that's not necessarily inherently good or bad. It's cool they did it for this. But obviously, like, it's not like if you come up with a different art style to use for a show, it's like, it's not like that's wrong. It's just neat to see it done like this, I guess, sometimes as well. But it's, I don't watch much in terms of animated superhero stuff. I feel like, I watch cartoons, but I watch, Futurama, and I used to watch Family Guy more. I guess I don't really watch Futurama much anymore, just because obviously it hasn't been running in a long time. But the point is, like, I watched, animation, South Park, Clone Wars, whatever. Like, I'm fine with animation. There are some people that it feels like they kind of can't watch it for whatever reason. It's just not their thing. But I like animation. Just haven't watched a ton of, like, superhero shows. I was never really that into, like, watching, Batman or Superman or whatever the Marvel animated stuff was.
I think this is usually if I watch, animated stuff, it's like comedic, humorous. I don't think I've really watched any serious cartoon aside from Invincible in the past few years. I guess growing up you get, like, superhero cartoons. I guess they're not comedic, but they're kid shows. And so this is absolutely not a kid show.
No.
Just because of the violence. Like, language really isn't a huge issue. Sex, nudity is not really an issue at all.
There's, like, a mild amount of sexual content, but nothing crazy.
It's really nothing bad. It's just, like, one episode that you see it. There's, like, drama, but it's mainly just the graphicness.
Yeah, some very, very, like, Quentin Tarantino type violent gore, over the top, people getting destroyed. This is basically not in terms of the actual premise of the show or structure of the show, but in terms of, like, the type of violence you see. This is, like, basically the animated version of The Boys.
Yes,
to the extent.
Yes.
It's like, well, but how would a superhero, if they were there, and there's a little bit of silliness, like, there's a little bit of, sometimes superheroes seem to have the similar abilities that they have in, like, a comic book or, like, a regular superhero movie where, whatever, Superman can catch someone and Superman's flying at 800 miles an hour and they catch someone who's falling, and immediately, they instantly inherit that velocity Superman has, but they're fine. Like, but when in reality that would just, like, kill you, like, and you would, like, basically snap in half from the change in force. Like, sometimes in this show it seems to be fine, where it's just magic, where it's like, a super fast guy can just grab you and move you out of the way of bad thing and you're totally fine. And other times when they want to, it seems like they can just basically, kill someone by, like, running through them or, like, flying really fast past them or something. So there's a little bit of that, but like most superhero stuff has that. Like honestly, I think only The Boys is, and even then I'm sure if you really went through it with a fine comb you could find something, but really only The Boys has like a consistent job of like everyone just dies from all these superhero things, and that's probably because like, well, yeah, it's The Boys, so the superheroes are all just terrible. So
Yeah.
as opposed to in this where it's like some are good and some are bad and some are really bad. So
Yeah, it's really, I mean, you described it well. It's really like, in a superhero movie, this, you have super strength, you punch a guy, like, they go ow, or they go flying. In reality, this TV show portrays it accurately, where if you get punched by some guy with super strength, your top half goes flying off, and you see all of it.
Yeah, if you get punched by someone whose fist is moving as fast as a bullet, like his fist will just go through you, much like a bullet.
Yeah, well, it's so funny because I was me and a friend were looking to watch just some kind of weekly watch some TV show together. I'm like, oh, Invincible, like it's superheroes, looks pretty cool. All right, that's cool. And so we watched it, and for the whole first episode, it's not really that bad, and then it ends just by completely smacking you in the face.
It does have a heck of an ending, yeah.
That's probably the goriest part of the whole show. Arguably, maybe it's the second. In terms of what you see is by far the goriest. But in terms of what I'm saying, people dying, that's definitely the end of the season that gets the trophy for that.
Yes, the amount in terms of body count, it's towards
body
the end,
count.
but
Yes,
in terms of the graphicness of the scene, the beginning episode or the end of the first episode is definitely up there.
So me and my friend were watching this, like, oh, this is pretty good, and then that ending scene in the first episode is probably easily won its Hall of Fame place in, like, I don't know, comic history, because it's just so iconically like gory. You're like, whoa.
Yes.
I feel like you can reference that and people will be like, oh yeah, but that completely caught us by surprise. Like this whole thing, like we didn't know anything about the Invincible comic, which is placed in the Image universe. Apparently, it's not Marvel or DC. All the superheroes are heavily parodied after DC superheroes. Yes. There's not a lot of I just was thinking about this the other day. There's not a lot. There's like maybe one or two like Marvel superheroes that you'd see out of Marvel. Everything else seems to be heavily parodied out of the DC universe.
Yeah, and even then, like, I don't even know, like, who is there anyone in here that feels, I guess part of it is there's actually a lot of overlap between Marvel and DC, because so you got like Red Rush or whatever, who's like the Flash, but you could also say he's Quicksilver, but he looks more like the Flash in his outfit, of course, because he's red.
Yep.
So, but obviously the Flash and Quicksilver are pretty similar in terms of their actual powers that they have.
Yes.
So they go fast. That's the whole point.
So and I don't know if anyone listening, or you, Paul, are familiar with the whole what's it called? There's an app, a game about it for the DC Injustice. That's right. There's a game called Injustice, if I am remembering correctly, where it's placed in a universe where Superman like turns evil, basically.
I think I am familiar with the idea. I think I've heard of Injustice. Yeah,
it's honestly a fantastic storyline. Like, I think it needs to be made a movie. DC should have made that a movie before they made Batman v Superman. But anyways, so this whole Invincible comic is based on that kind of scenario where you have you're in kind of like a heavily parodied DC universe. They're not even trying to hide that. And then there's a Superman character, and he goes bad. He goes evil.
Yes.
And he happens to be the father of the main character, Invincible. Mark, yes, his name Mark. And that's basically the setting that that's the happens.
Premise. And what's interesting about the show is, because we don't reveal it fully right away, because obviously the whole first episode is pretty much, okay, we get Mark. He's like high school kid. His dad is, the biggest superhero on the planet. I think the opening is Yeah, the first thing we see is the White House, and we get this conversation. It's one of the, there's actually okay. One thing I'll raise as a little bit of a critique, I like this show overall. I'll give it a thumbs up to get that out of the way. But like, there's a lot of things in this show that are a little like Chekhov's gun sort of situation, where it's like, and I'm sure it'll come back up later in future seasons. It's just a little annoying how much of it comes up in this first season and then just isn't fulfilled at all.
Yes.
Like, so we get the Secret Service guy. There's a Secret Service agent, or there's technically two, but one of them is talking to the other, and he's talking about his son, and like it kind of is enough in depth that you're like, okay, is this like gonna be a character?
He comes back once later.
He comes back once, but there's nothing about him in the end, and also it's like you're like, okay, so does he show up again and have a more important role like later in the show? It just feels very like disconnected, that it's like we have this whole dialogue scene and it's like, is this just supposed to be a lot of like front loaded like make me care about this character before we see something
that's what
bad
it feels
happen?
like.
But it's like, it's just kind of funny. And like, so anyway, the two Secret Service guys are like, oh, we're here and we got to do like the training session about dealing with like metahumans or whatever. And they're like, oh, how are we even going to do that? Like, how would we, deal with a metahuman or whatever? Like when they can shoot lasers or like control minds. That's the first drop you get of like controlling minds, by the way. I like that they do that twice in the first episode, because at least it gives you like that little bit of a question mark at the end of like, well, maybe Omni-Man wasn't actually evil. Maybe there's someone else pulling the strings. But it's like, you kind of knew that wasn't the case, because that would sort of be the lamest thing they could have done if it was like, the good guy is getting controlled by secret evil villain Von Doom hiding in lava base. Like, that would have been a little stupid. But like, at least they kind of give you that opening of like, well, maybe there is something more to it than like what's going on here, and Omni-Man isn't actually evil. They kind of let that hang for at least a couple episodes to kind of keep the mystery on, I guess. But anyway, so they're talking, and then like super villains attack, and then we get introduced to the superhero team that sort of protects basically the Justice League. It's the Guardians of the Globe, and they save the White House, and it's great. And then Omni-Man shows up, and really you can kind of tell like Omni-Man is sort of, there's definitely tension between them. And Omni-Man, it's sort of the whole thing of like the other people on the team are doing stuff that's like heroic and useful, but like it's very clear that Omni-Man is just so far above everyone else on this superhero group.
Yes.
That it's like, why are they even here? It very much feels like that whole, Justice League Superman thing, where it's like, why? The old College Humor video with Batman and, it's, the Batman series, and it's Batman and Superman on top of the roof, and Superman's like, I was thinking we could team up, and Batman's like, why? Like, it's that, basically. So, it's clear Omni-Man's just better at everything. And
in the beginning, you see the Guardians of the Globe fighting, defending the White House, whatever, and you're like, oh, look at superheroes doing typical superhero stuff. But by the end of the series of the season, you realize that they were, as much as they are far below Omni-Man, those guys really were the top of the line.
Yes.
Heroes not because of their powers, but because they knew how to work well as a team, and they had so much experience. Because there's a lot of super people in this universe. Yeah,
it's a very populated world with lots and lots of meta people. It sort of begs the question, why doesn't the White House just have like a superhuman on staff to defend?
Yes.
But
there you go. Because there's another team that you follow through this first season, and they don't really know how to work well. They're at a certain level. Apparently, we get the vibe that in this universe there are like different like ranked groups of superheroes.
It's pretty funny that there's like it's like multiple franchises of superhero teams.
Yes. And the Guardians of the Globe were the top, and anyways, and so but you follow this other group of heroes, and they're learning to work with each other, and they kind of don't. They're all just kind of independently, doing their own thing, and you see that they're not able to prevent casualty. A lot of people, when they come in to try to save the day, they save the day, but lots of innocent people die.
Yes, and that's a big point when we see the Guardians first fight, is like their first objective is like they clear the area, and then once they even like specifically say like, all right, the area is clear, so now we can really let loose and like be crazy overpowered and stuff. So
yeah, so interesting. I like that part about the show.
Yes. And we see the difference between this team that works together well, that almost seems like they could have beaten Omni-Man when they were all working together. Like, it wasn't like Omni-Man wins, but like you almost get the feeling that if this was a fight they all got to prepare for instead of being surprised with, maybe they could have actually won.
Yes.
So
well, the thing is, they could have maybe, I don't know if they could have killed him. What I'm still waiting for in this show is the kryptonite. We still don't have a kryptonite.
I don't know if I want there to be a kryptonite, though. You know what I mean? Like, because that's probably my least favorite. Something that can hurt them is fine, but like, obviously it shouldn't be like an actual kryptonite, if that's what you mean, because like kryptonite is sort of like the least fun part of Superman. Is like, Superman's so good at everything, but then we like get the green rock out and then he turns into like wimpy baby man.
Well, it's like the Achilles heel, right? You have the super guy with like it's the same. You see this in the stories everywhere. It's like the hole in the Death Star that you shoot through and it explodes the whole thing. Like, really? But okay, it's just a trope you see everywhere. But yeah, it is kind of a lame part.
Who would design a system like that? Cue shot of Dr. Doofenshmirtz self-destruct button. Yeah.
He designed the Death Star. I knew it. Yeah. But that's really the only element that I see that's missing in the terms of a DC parody. Is there's not even an obvious kryptonite,
which is cool because it does make him seem a lot more dangerous.
Yeah. It's really a fascinating show.
It's a lot like
go ahead.
It's a lot like The Boys in the sense that you have Homelander in The Boys, Homelander's basically like Captain America crossed with Superman, and he's like, what do you do to hurt him? And it's like, you can't. Like, he's just the most insane person. Like, it seems like some of the other heroes can kind of fight him, but like, how do you fight someone like that? And the answer is like, you don't. He's Superman and bad in a world with no kryptonite, and like, so the only way you can hurt him is like emotionally, kind of. And even that's a little bit difficult, but like, you can manipulate him in the same way you might manipulate like a really powerful celebrity or something. Because like, I guess, he's not, at least at this point in The Boys, I don't know what the future holds, but like at this point he's not willing, he's not quite willing just to go on like a murder spree and just like kill everyone. So like, he is a little worried about his like public image. So I guess that's like his only weakness. But like, in terms of like physical violence, it's like, there's like nothing really you can do against this dude. Like, you can fight him with other superheroes and maybe they'll have a chance, but like, there's nothing you can do. And sometimes that's boring and sometimes it's interesting. So it is cool that this show is told well enough, the storytelling is good enough that it's actually interesting. Because like, that's one of my least favorite parts in like the Superman franchise, is that it's boring to me. Like, it's boring that Superman is just like, you can't stand up to him when he is, being Superman, and then as soon as kryptonite comes out, like, he's just a little boring wimp. And it's like the two extremes, where it's like, he's silly how powerful he is without kryptonite, and with kryptonite he's so weak that you wonder like why he hasn't been killed. So it's a weird dynamic there. And
It's but what was I gonna say? Lost train of thought.
Sorry
for interrupting.
Weakness, my bad. I'm just going off on kryptonite. But,
No.
Yeah, Omni-Man does not shoot lasers out of his eyes, so I guess that's one key difference.
Does he?
We never see him use lasers. He just flies fast and punches people. So
now that I'm thinking,
if he has heat vision, I feel like he would have used it at some point. So
arguably his kryptonite is like either his emotions or his personality or his son Mark.
Yeah.
Because the only we learned that at the very end of the season, he instead of just staying and destroying the Earth or doing whatever he was going to do, he leaves because he leaves because of the emotional baggage that comes from not having Mark on his side, of course, because Mark is like, I can't side with you on this thing. So it's interesting because like his one, if he's physically like untouchable, and we see that he can definitely be hurt by other super people if they're if they know what they're doing and they're super pissed and capable.
Super pissed. The worst superhero.
Then they can do damage to him, but nothing can kill him. So if he's untouchable, his one weakness,
that should be his superhero name is Untouchable.
Untouchable. There you go. Because it's interesting because for the majority of the season, he's trying to hide. Okay, so basically what happens at the end of the first episode, this is what completely caught me and my friend by surprise. We just like watched that scene and then sat in like silence, like what
just happened?
He at the end of the first episode, he bloody kills all of the Guardians of the Globe. Omni-Man does.
Yes.
Mark's father, Invincible's father. And
this is after we've seen him being like a pretty good dad to Mark.
Yes.
And like, oh, I'm so glad you got your powers. Like he's like some tough love, but he's trying to like train his son and like be a dad. Like dads are tough love. Like that's like the figure they're supposed to kind of be like in a kid's life. So we see him like being seemingly like a good man, and a good father. It seems like on the surface, and then all of a sudden we get hit with that scene.
And so it leaves you thinking like, he must have been like brainwashed or something, but throughout the whole season he is conscious of what he did and he's intentionally trying to hide it, which is kind of weird because if he's really that untouchable, if we're going to call him that, if he's really that untouchable, why would he even bother hiding what he did and not just, why is he even living a regular life?
It is interesting. That is one of the slight points of conflict in the story is that, so the reason why Omni-Man kills the Guardians of the Globe is because
you find out in the last episode of the season.
Yeah, so one of the first things we're told is Omni-Man is a what is he, Viltrumite, I think is the name of the species or the planet.
Yep.
And we're told Viltrumites, they're all supermen basically. They can all fly and they're super strong and they have most of the typical like Superman powers. And,
it's Krypton.
Yeah, it's Krypton, except it doesn't get destroyed by a black hole or a supernova or whatever. Yeah. And so but the Viltrumites, they're just good and noble people, and so they just go out and like a Viltrumite will just go to another planet and just be like a hero and just try and like do good on that planet and like save the natives from whatever hardships might befall them, giant asteroids or evil villains or whatever the case may be. Like that's what we're told at the beginning, that's just like the culture of Viltrum, is that they send these people out to just go be good in the universe and like be a force for good and like help developing planets that aren't quite as advanced as Viltrum is. Like they're just the ultimate good Samaritans. That's what we are led to believe. And then we find out later, and it's kind of sus. Like right off the bat, it's a little sus. But anyway, like we find out later that really what's happening is Viltrum is trying to build like this intergalactic empire, and conquering planets is hard. Okay, and sorry, there was a brief interruption there, but I think we're back. But anyway, so conquering planets is hard. Viltrum is building this intergalactic empire, and they say that it's hard to conquer all these planets. That's a little bit funny because it's like, aren't all of your soldiers literally Superman? So like, why is it so difficult? But whatever. So they come up with this plan. I get that the universe is a big place, and they do say that the Viltrumite population is like reduced because they did this like stupid Hunger Games thing to make sure that like only the strongest Viltrumites survive, so that way they have the most pure society.
It's basically a Nazi regime on
like
another planet
on,
full of Supermen.
On steroids. Like they kill steroids. Like half of all the Viltrumites die in this like contest.
That's the first time we hear of Viltrumites dying. So apparently Viltrumites can kill Viltrumites.
Yes.
But a non-Viltrumite, apparently, I guess they can die because if they're fighting a war, then somehow they're dying. But it's, I guess, a lot easier for a Viltrumite to kill a Viltrumite.
Yes, and we do see that Omni-Man almost dies from the giant monster thing, but his son actually saves him before learning, you know, he's actually bad. But yes. So basically they hatch this new plan that instead of conquering everybody by force, even though Earth would probably be a relatively easy place to conquer if all of your soldiers are Superman again, but whatever. Instead of conquering everybody by force, they're doing this new experiment, and so they took probably like a few thousand, is what it seems like in the show, of like senior Viltrumite military officers, you know, loyal guys with a lot of experience and talent, and they each go to a planet and they just like set up shop there for, you know, however long, and they're gonna Omni-Man's been on Earth for 20 years, we're told, and you know, their job is basically just to like, they say weaken the planet. I don't know if, again, the execution of that part of the story is a little bit lacking.
Yeah, it's not very much. There's not a lot of that area explained to us yet because we've all seen it from Mark's perspective.
Yeah.
So there's not actually a lot of Omni-Man that we know.
Because like they say weaken the planet, but also like clearly you weren't weakening the planet. Like,
and I think that's because I can talk about this later, but that's because of more of an Omni-Man. What's his name? What's his actual name?
Nolan.
On Earth. Nolan. That's more of a Nolan emotional reason. Like he was kind of personally delaying. But
I just assumed that it was supposed to be like they're there and he's like inspiring, and that, you know, that he shows everyone that he's the greatest hero in the universe, and then eventually when they're like, hey, the Viltrumite Empire is a thing, then maybe the planet might basically just like join of their own free will, or like at least
honestly that's probably smarter.
Yeah, yes. That would be a more intelligent way of going about it. Like, and like obviously like maybe, I don't know, we don't know anything really about the Empire's policy to conquered planets. Like we know that on their own planet they did that stupid Hunger Games thing, you know, purge, whatever, you know, ethnic cleansing, but like we don't know what life is like on their conquered planets, because you also get that whole quandary of like, what use is regular planets like to supermen? Like, they're not good slaves because one Superman could do like all of the work of 1 million regular people in like a day. Yep. So like there are a lot of like logical breakdowns there, and so it's like, do you just get the resources?
I think it's like, I think what they were doing, if I remember correctly, there were vague mentions, but they were trying to make all planets like Viltrum.
Yeah.
So like mainly they're supposed to be habitable for Viltrumites, so Viltrum can actually expand and populate all the planets as everyone else decreases.
And that's why there's also a thing, but it's never fully explained upon in the show. It's funny I'm pointing out all these flaws, but I do generally like the show overall just because the idea, like the character development and some of the ideas laid out is fun. But like, because it seems like Mark getting his powers that's the tipping point. Where, like, Omni-Man was just, you know, happy to be a hero. He's happy to be a hero on Earth. And then Mark gets his powers, and then suddenly, like, a change happens. And, like, his wife notices it, and is like, Nolan, you've just been acting differently. And Nolan, Omni-Man, even says at one point, like, oh, maybe it would have been better if Mark had never gotten his powers. And so you're kind of led to believe that, like, the idea that, you know, Omni-Man or that Viltrumites maybe can make, a superhuman hybrid with regular humans, because that's basically what happened. Omni-Man married an Earth woman, and, they had a kid, and that's, Mark, who is our main character, and he's, a 17-year-old boy, and he just gets his superpowers, like, during the first episode of the show. They, grow in or whatever, and they descend, and, he gets his superpowers, and it seems like that's the inciting event. Like, that's the thing that is like, oh, well, now I'm going to kill the Guardians of the Globe. So, like, but again, that's never clearly laid out. Like, maybe the idea that, like, they can make essentially Viltrumites from Earth people if they, like, interbreed with them, is that, like, the reason why it's like, okay, now, yeah, we're going to move forward with, like, phase 2 of, joining Earth into the Empire. But we don't know, because, again, that's never really spelled out. But, I mean, Nolan specifically says maybe it would be better if he had never gotten his powers. But then it's like, well, but then, like, were you not gonna conquer Earth if it turned out that, like, your kids don't get superpowers? Like, it's just there's a lot of question marks there.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. Yeah, because, again, you find out a lot of things about Omni-Man and Viltrum in, like, in the last 2 episodes, particularly the last episode. And so there's much left to be explaining. I wonder how intentional they're going to be with this show. Like, are they actually going to play it, like, pretty smart and, address all the concerns that we're addressing here? Or is it just going to go a typical, like, superhero route, and typical superhero things happen, and there's a giant space war, and, I don't know. It's not very thought out. Like, maybe they just wanted to conquer Earth because they wanted to, because conquering. Or maybe there's something more behind it, and so we'll have to see where the season goes. Season 2 has been approved.
Good.
Yes, yes, excellent.
That'd be a little annoying. Like, just gonna end on that note, and then be like, all right, well, good luck with that. Never getting any more.
It looks like what I'm assuming is season 2 is going to be a lot of again, Mark's adventures on Earth.
Yeah, they
getting his training done, getting his, like, his skill, working with the Earth CIA people. Not that they're American CIA, but just the Earth.
They're the, like,
intelligence
Earth
people.
Defense Force that is also American, because we see, like, Cecil, who's the head of it, has the little flag pin. So it is, America just, saves the day for everyone, as we do, I guess. So, whatever.
And I guess now Earth is going to start cooperating with that intergalactic
Federation or whatever.
Federation that's opposing the Viltrumites, which you learn of
in the end.
In the end, and because there is another species, they also look like they also have super. It looks like they also have Superman powers, but they look like aliens because they can fly. They're super strong, so maybe they can put up some of a resistance to Viltrum. Mm-hmm. Anyways. So it looks like season 2, Mark's going to be learning his Earth stuff, and then Earth, the planet, will be cooperating with the other alien people. Maybe there'll be drama there. I don't know. And then I'm assuming, I don't know if it's going to go this way, but at the end of season 2, I'm assuming that's when, like, oh, the Viltrumites are back, and then it's going to be like cliffhanger season 3.
That would probably be a likely outcome, I assume. There is a lot of just, like, weird setup in this where it's like, I don't know if they're almost following the comics too closely, because but even then it's just weird. Like, there's like a cold open to an episode where we see, like, a guy in Egypt, and they're opening
the Mummy Man. Yes, that's the weirdest
it's
opening.
Never referenced again. It's like
a legit, like, 2-minute opening of this guy, like, opening a mummy tune. He looks like evil. He's like, now the treasure is mine, and then, like, all this, like, weird, like, Nat's god, ancient Egypt stuff happens, and he gets trapped in the tomb, and the door slams, and then it cuts over to Mark. And you never hear anything about that. that moment
just
again.
Completely unrelated to anything else we'll see in this entire season. Like, at least, like, the other stuff, as much as it is sort of, like, never ties back in, at least it's like, well, okay, but Mark was there. So that's how it's connected. Because if we go on, like, Mark's little side adventures, because you have that overarching plot with Omni-Man, but then you also have Mark's, like, adventures along the way, right?
Yeah.
And we've got, like, Mark he fights some criminals in the first episode, and then he teams up with one later on, and you learn that really like that criminal was just trying to like take over. He says he's going to do better than the old guy, but you know, he was actually just trying to be like the new top of the crime
mob boss.
Yeah. So like, so you think, okay, well maybe there's some like honor amongst thieves here, and maybe he owes like Mark a solid now, so maybe like in the end he's going to come back and, you know, help out. Like, but he never gets brought back up again this season. Maybe
what it feels like they're slowly building a large like universe. Like they're planning on having this be around for a few seasons at least.
Yes, I guess that's true. It just is funny how many things were like that in this season. Like the adventure on Mars, and we learn about this whole like the hive species of facehuggers that like seems like it's a huge it seems like it's a huge threat, and then like again, that's just dropped. Like, we know that there's one on Earth who's maybe gonna, you know, do some bad stuff, and they're like doing bad stuff on Mars, and so like we know that's a future threat that they'll have to face. But again, like one episode and then dropped, not brought up again for the rest of the season. The thing with the Secret Service guy and his son, like they show up twice, kind of randomly, and it was funny because like they're just kind of a background thing that you see for like a couple minutes, like. You know, and you're like, oh, maybe they're going to show up for just a couple minutes in every episode, because it's the first two episodes are the episodes where you actually see them. And you think maybe they're just going to pop in every once in a while to be like the regular human perspective on like some stuff that's going on. But then it's like, no, it's just the first two. Like, now we're not going to like stop back with them again. Maybe in a future season. I don't know.
So either it's like the TV show, whatever the show is, a little overambitious in how much it wants to address, or they're trying to quickly find filler to bring in something in addition to the main plot with Omni-Man, the overarching theme. Or it's just they have a lot planned and they're just sowing the seeds now for everything that's coming in later seasons. I mean, it's a comic, and so there's probably an infinite amount of things, different directions you can go and things you can talk about. I wonder if a lot of these moments too are just addressing the fans who already know and love the Invincible universe, and they're like, oh, that's this guy, no, that's this guy, and you know, fans like that kind of thing. But I don't know anything about Invincible, and so that's why that was my joy in watching this experience. I knew nothing about this universe,
and that was fun. Yeah,
it was fun. This show does a really good job of just keeping things really interesting. Like there's the Mahler twins, the blue.
I villains. Like the Mahler twins. They might be my favorite characters in this show.
They have interesting perspectives and how they play out cloning. That's a very fascinating part. It's also very fascinating to see how the Earth, with all its technology, like it's like today's technology, with a few additional enhanced weapons. Of course, it's a superhero universe,
right?
But it's really fascinating and interesting to see how they respond to Omni-Man. It's really cool to see how it's like there's all this like secret agent stuff going on, where it's like Omni-Man is trying to hide the fact that he killed the Guardians of the Globe, and then but the Earth Secret Defense Force people, whatever, the CIA, they know that it's like 99% sure that he did it. But no one can bring it up, because if they bring it up and accuse him, then all of a sudden they're not able to stop him. Like, what are you gonna do? It's like tell the untouchable guy that he has to go to prison or something.
We're going to very politely ask him to leave. Like,
even if you can't even execute him. So it's like, like this guy is guilty of this terrible crime and is huge danger, but like, what are you gonna do about it? And so it's very fascinating to see that dynamic. And all in the middle of all of this, you have like Mark going through high school drama.
Yes.
And Mark's oblivious to it all, and he learns about it. And so it's all just very there's plenty to keep the plot moving. It's all very interesting and fascinating, and generally it's done pretty well. And plus I haven't seen, aside from The Boys, there's like no superhero franchise that is super realistic. Not to say it's like Invincible is like 100% realistic, but it doesn't shy away from like, oh, like aliens are invading the city again. Like, oh, let's go save the city. Oh yeah, there's tons of people dying and being like blown in half, and there's blood everywhere. And it's like, oh yeah, that would happen if you invaded a city.
Yes.
So, like in Marvel, aliens invade New York and like, oh, look at they're shooting people, but you never see anything.
It's actually really funny. There's a line in one of the I think it's the Civil War. The line is in where they're basically talking about like, oh, we got to regulate superheroes because of the collateral damage, and then they're like, like between like New York and Sokovia and like whatever some other Avengers fight somewhere, like more than 180 people have died in these events, and it's like that's it.
Yeah, it's really small.
Like I was expecting like thousands of people, like aliens invaded New York, and they seemed like they were just shooting indiscriminately. And you mean like only like 100 people got killed there? Like really? Like man, like the most inept aliens of all time. Like this is not.
Yeah, they're probably stormtroopers.
Like think about like those giant space whales that were like one of those crashing into a building should kill more than 100 people. Like not trying to be like brutal or anything, but like also it seems like it would be more realistic if you were like, oh yeah, like we got to regulate superheroes because like sure you helped in New York, but like that in the crossfire of that battle like 40,000 people died. Like that would give a little more incentive than like, oh, like 180 people died, but like more people died in car accidents last week than that. So like
yeah. Yeah, it would be interesting to see how Invincible would take a scenario like the first Avengers movie, New York being invaded. I feel like Invincible technically, I think it was like the third episode, they had like an alien force invade the city.
It was early on, yeah.
It was early on, and it was supposed to be like a typical, like they weren't trying to be super realistic with it. They were just being like, oh, like watch, superhero do superhero stuff.
Just another day in the superhero world. There's aliens attacking Chicago as they do.
Yes, it's so funny because something I told myself routinely throughout this show was like, why would anyone in a world with this many superheroes? Why would anyone want to live in a city, in a metropolitan center with skyscrapers?
Can I just say it's nice that it's Chicago? I like that it's Chicago. There's not that many other superhero franchises that like.
Is it actually Chicago?
It's Chicago. Yeah, they say Chicago.
Oh, I didn't notice that. Kudos to them. Yes. So, yeah, but like that was an interesting moment when those aliens invaded the city because it wasn't like a huge plot point. It was just like, oh, just typical day in the superhero life. Got an alien army invading this city. And but at the same time, you got to see Mark struggle with seeing like people die, and like he goes in trying to save the day, and it doesn't work out very well because there's like he's got blood in his hands. He's trying to save an old lady, and he's like carrying her into the hospital. And he gets there, and he's like got some like heavy, I don't know, it's not PTSD, but he's just got trauma from seeing all this blood, and the person he's been carrying is actually dead. And there's another scene later in the series where he tries to save someone from a collapsing building. Typical superhero moment, and he realizes at the end that he's just holding onto the arm that's been severed from the body because it's been crushed by the building. Mm-hmm. And so like you have moments like that where it's like, yeah, that seems pretty realistic, but at the same time, if you really had an alien army invading a city like that, I mean, like there would be like maybe like 5 skyscrapers left standing by the time it was all over.
Yes.
So it would be interesting to see some kind of series take on that kind of reality where it's like, okay, realistically, New York is flattened. That's what would happen. But
I'm really looking forward to future seasons of The Boys, just because I haven't read the Boys comics either. But like from what I've heard about them, like Homelander just kind of continues to become more and more unhinged. So I'm looking forward to seeing some live action like superhero carnage in a way that we have not seen before, and like what do you do when you have to fight Superman?
Yes,
that'll be.
I haven't seen The Boys, but I should probably watch that next.
It's an interesting show. I mean I would be happy to talk about that at some point on here. It's a pretty good take on superheroes, and it is again like, and I don't want to sprinkle too much of The Boys on our Invincible discussion. But we're pretty much done talking about Invincible, and I think we talked about before we'd like to try and shorten the episodes a little bit, and we're coming up on 50 minutes, which is a pretty good amount of time, I think, for like a movie discussion.
I think so.
But The Boys is definitely like it's so good and also so bad at the same time because it does feel so authentic. Like, yeah, this is the most like there are some, Marvel or whatever DC where it's like how would the real world react, or like what would be different if, it was the real world, but there are also these superheroes, how would that be? The Boys feels the most authentic by far of like, yeah, no, this is probably what would happen. Like, there's only a couple things that might be like a little too far, and even then it's like it seems too far, but then you think about stupid things you see in the real world and you're like, no, actually probably someone would react like that. Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it. Like, it's definitely the best take I've ever seen in terms of just like, yeah, this is what would happen if we had just our real regular reality but also superheroes. So yeah.
Fascinating. But, yeah, I gotta watch that then.
Anyway, we'll add that to the list for future point of discussion, The Boys. Ooh. But yeah, so that's Invincible. It's a cool overall series. I like Mark as a character. It's sort of fun to have like a superhero coming of age story that's not just like your typical superhero origin. It's like a little more, a little more dark, a little more like responsibility to save people, but also like people die like a lot, and it's hard, and this job kind of sucks, and it's not like a perfect show. I think we talked about a lot of our complaints, but like I enjoyed watching it. Like it was overall well done, I would say. Like I was engaged.
I would say definitely well done. Definitely worth a watch. Not for kids though.
Yeah, no.
If you had to put an age on it, I mean, what would you say?
I mean, like a high schooler could probably watch it.
Yeah, a high schooler could watch it. If I had a high schooler, I don't know if I would want as my son or daughter or whatever. I don't know if I would want them watching that super early. Maybe I don't know, just because it's so like gory. Yeah, but it's definitely a very well done show. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, give it my thumbs up of recommendation. So
thumbs up.
Sweet. Well, thanks for tuning into this episode of Shouting at Screens, where we talk about